Sandra, Republican Texas Senator Ted Cruz joins us now. He's a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. His father fled Cuba in the 1950s, and he's got an op-ed out titled Cuba Libre in the National Review today. Senator, good to talk to you. We heard from Jen Psaki, the press secretary, at the briefing just a short time ago, saying that the Cuban people are rising up against oppression and mismanagement from the government, that the Biden administration supports their right to protest. But as Phil Keating was pointing out just a moment ago, Alejandro Mayorkas, the DHS secretary, has no interest in entertaining anybody coming across the Florida Straits to make an asylum claim. Here's what he said yesterday. Listen here.
The time is never right to attempt migration by sea. To those who risk their lives doing so, this risk is not worth taking. Allow me to be clear. If you take to the sea, you will not come to the United States.
Now, nobody wants to see a risky mass migration across the Florida states. It is very, very dangerous. But there seems to be some contradictory messaging going on here, that on the southern border between the U.S. and Mexico, Democrats are saying entertain all asylum claims. Mayorkas is rejecting that out of hand when it comes to Cubans. What do you think?
Look, that's exactly right. It seems for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the only immigrants on the face of the earth that they don't want to come to America are Cubans. That's the only instance in which the Biden administration is expressing a resistance to people coming here illegally. In my home state of Texas, we have open borders. We have the Biden DHS releasing people, hundreds of thousands of people. We're also seeing, I spoke yesterday with a Texas mayor down on the border who was describing that they're seeing COVID cases skyrocketing as more and more people are being released. And the Biden administration is leaning in even further. But when it comes to Cuba, it's not complicated. Here's what Joe Biden needs to say. The communist dictatorship in Cuba is evil. It is oppressive. They are murderers. They are torturers. And the people want freedom. The American people stand with the Cuban people. And unfortunately, the Biden administration has been lukewarm at best on that simple and clear messaging.
So do you think that there is a moment here that if the Biden administration of the U.S. were to apply pressure, that something might give in Cuba?
So I think it's certainly possible. We have seen moments when there's uprisings. You know, the Green Revolution in Iran was an example of the people rising up, and Barack Obama was president then, and the Obama administration did then what the Biden administration is doing now, which is giving lukewarm support for the protesters. You know, I'll tell you, John, I want to read to you a text that I got from my mother. Sure. My mother and our family is in communications with family friends that are still in Cuba. And here's what one close friend of the family said. Things are much more serious there than what is reported on TV. And this friend of the family described, she says, she has no food, same for almost everyone. Yesterday, she had a bowl of thin soup, nothing more. She was asking for help for the first time. No way to get money into Cuba. Banks are closed. 5 protesters were killed in Santiago. Radio stations are being taken over by protesters. Internet shut down. So no further contact available. Matanzas, which is where my dad was born, is a hot spot for COVID. And it sounds as though desperate times are generating desperate measures. This is an inflection point, and America ought to stand up and speak boldly on the side of freedom and against the communist dictatorship. And, you know, your show mentioned a minute ago the socialists in Congress, the Democrats who are unwilling to condemn the regime. The reason is the Cuban government is a socialist dictatorship, and American socialists don't want to acknowledge the evil and suffering and oppression that Cuban socialists are imposing on the people.
You know, Senator, you mentioned the hardships, obviously, in Cuba. Some Texas Democrats are suggesting that they're going through hardship, having to have a salad while they're here in Washington, D.C. after fleeing the Lone Star State. A short time ago, Kamala Harris met with them and likened them to the people who during the civil rights era were protesting for the right to vote. Listen here.
They took bold, courageous action. In line with the legacy of everyone from Frederick Douglass, who's over my right shoulder, when he fought for the right of black men to vote in America, to the legacy that includes all those women who marched down Pennsylvania Avenue for women's right to vote, to all of those folks who shed their blood on the Edmund Pettus Bridge to make sure that we would, in 1965, pass the Voting Rights Act.
She says they took bold, courageous action. They got on a couple of private planes with a case of beer and flew to Washington. Is that comparable?
It's actually pretty ridiculous. Last I checked, the heroic civil rights protesters on the Edmund Pettus Bridge were not in a private chartered jet. They didn't have a case of Miller Lite next to them. Look, these are partisan Democrats playing a political stunt, and they're desperate for media attention. They're getting it. The Biden administration wants to play politics, and so they're doing that. But this is going to fail. They're going to eventually have to come home, and when they come home, the governor has rightly said he will continue to call special sessions until Texas passes voter integrity law to protect the integrity of elections. And if these House Democrats continue pulling this stunt, they're going to be arrested. And the Texas Constitution gives ample authority to arrest legislators who are trying to shut down the operation of government and to forcibly make them present on the House floor so that the wheels of government can continue to turn. So when their stunt is over, the legislature will do its job.
Need a quick answer. We just got some seconds left here, Senator, but all of this is wrapped around the For the People Act, House Resolution 1, Senate Bill 1. There is a suggestion that the Democrats might try to go for a carve-out in the filibuster to try to get this passed. What will Senate Republicans do to try to forestall
Look,
that?
I hope they don't do that. If they end the filibuster, the damage to the country is catastrophic. This bill, S1, many of us are calling it the Corrupt Politicians Act. It would strike down voter ID laws across the country. It would strike down prohibitions on ballot harvesting. It would automatically register potentially millions of illegal immigrants. It would allow felons to vote.
But can you do
it is
anything?
designed to keep Democrats in power the next 100 years, and it is a corrupt power grab that thankfully I don't think is going to pass unless the Democrats manage to end the filibuster.
Right. Well, Jen Psaki indicating a little while ago that there's not the votes to do that, at least on a permanent basis. We'll see if they can do it on a carve-out basis. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, always good to spend time with you. Thanks for joining us today.
Good to be with you.
Off the show. Thanks. Sandra?
Britney Spears.